Addressing global leaders at the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Wednesday local time, President Yoon Suk Yeol claimed it was, quote, paradoxical that a permanent member of the UN Security Council would wage war by invading another sovereign nation and receive arms and ammunition from a regime that blatantly violates Security Council resolutions. So what are the broader implications of the president's latest assertion? What are the prospects of effective countermeasures against hostile weapons collaboration? And what are the other challenges to global stability? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. Today we delve into President Yoon Suk Yeol's latest address on the UN platform amid the various regional and global challenges to peace and prosperity. For more on this, I have Professor Choi Hyun Jin from Kyung Hee University here in the studio. Professor Choi, as always, welcome.
Good afternoon, Sonny.
I also have Dr. Stephen Noerper at Asia Dialogue live on the line. Dr. Noerper, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Oh, nice to see you again, Sonny.
Right, Professor Choi, as widely expected, President Yoon Suk Yeol raised concern over potential collaboration between North Korea and Russia on the weapons front. Let's begin with what he said exactly.
The South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol used his speech to the UN General Assembly to send a strong warning to Russia and North Korea. Following this summit between the two countries, he said that he would not stand idly by if the two countries take actions that threaten South Korean national security, including an arms deal between those two countries. So he said it like this: the North Korea-Russian military deal is a provocation directly aimed at the security and peace of the Republic of Korea, and as well as Ukraine. The warning that the Korea and its allies and friends will not stand idly by. And he also said it is a self-contradictory that a permanent member of the UN Security Council, that is Russia, so this country is supposed to be the final protector of world peace, but now invades another sovereign state, wages war, and receives arms and other weapons from a country like North Korea in direct violation of the UN Security Council resolution. So South Korea is a direct party to the security crisis with North Korea, and therefore this message from President Yoon can be viewed as a declaration of a strong opposition to the military deal between Russia and North Korea, and also a call for international attention and solidarity.
Right, indeed. Dr. Noerper, as Professor Choi has mentioned, President Yoon vowed that South Korea, along with its allies and partners, will not, and I quote, stand idly by in the event of an arms deal between North Korea and Russia. That being said, Dr. Noerper, what countermeasures do you envision and how effective do they look to be?
Well, that's a hard question to answer until the three have sat down, meaning the United States, Korea, and Japan on their trilateral level to try to formulate a response. They are concerned about this, and there is most likely going to be some transfer of munitions. That's clearly what Russia has signaled. And in the sit-down between Putin and Kim Jong-un, it looked like that was the angle that the Russians find most interesting. I remember the Russian stocks are depleted, but I would be quick to add that both are at a strategic disadvantage. So it really behooves the international community to show the resolve that we've just heard and to lean forward in a way that limits those transfers and shows through exercises, through reinforcements, through deterrence, that this type of activity won't be tolerated in the international community.
Right, and in the meantime, Professor Choi, should South Korea consider direct weapons provision to Russia, to Ukraine, that is, if Russia transfers advanced weapons-related technology to North Korea?
That's a difficult question. But recently, the Korean government has decided to send two domestically produced mine-clearing tanks, and this tank is known as called as Rhino, to Ukraine. And we are currently discussing how to transport this asset to Ukraine. But there has been no change to date in the Korean government policy of not providing lethal weapons to Ukraine. So mine-clearing tank Rhino is of course a non-lethal weapon. So Korea has been also delivering other non-lethal goods to Ukraine, including emergency medicine and also combat foods and bulletproof jacket and helmets. However, there has been some signs of a change in this stance on non-lethal weapons and humanitarian aid. For example, the President Yoon Suk Yeol told media in April like this: if there is a situation that is not acceptable to the international community, such as large-scale attacks on civilians, massacre, or serious violation of the laws of war, it may become difficult to argue for only humanitarian and financial assistance. So this message from the President means that the direct weapons provision could be considered as the situation changes. So but still it's hard to predict the future. But recently, according to media report, one anonymous senior government official in the Korean government told that it's time to decide on an arms support system that even includes lethal weapons. And therefore, right now it's government policy not to provide lethal weapon. It is still valid. However, if the situation changes, for example, if North Korean weapons is directly provided to Russia and Russia provides more advanced military technology to North Korea, maybe the change of this policy can be considered.
Right, indeed. And staying with the potential collaboration between North Korea and Russia, Dr. Noerper, some say in exchange for weapons for use in Ukraine, Russia may aid North Korea in its satellite mission instead of its nuclear arms efforts. What do you say?
Well, Russia knows that it is limited by the Security Council, as abject as its behavior has been, and in providing a fundamental challenge through its attack on Ukraine. It will be hesitant to transfer aspects of some missile technology, which would be clear violations of UN protocol. They may also distrust, ultimately, DPRK intentions around the use of that technology. There have been some reports of the third largest missile manufacturer having been hacked by the DPRK. So we don't know really what the Russians are thinking in that regard. What is more likely is a space launch, which seems to be Kim Jong-un's primary interest. Putin presented Kim a cosmonaut's glove, and if a cosmonaut is sent up from the DPRK, that's one thing which is less threatening and at least keeps the DPRK from launching its own attempts, failed or not. But if we're talking about a transfer of satellite technology, then the question is very significant. Is it something that puts U.S. and South Korean forces at a disadvantage? And so we'll have to keep a very close eye on what happens by way of that technology. Clearly, the Russians are economically in need and so are trying to do what they can. And one of the things they consider a strength is their space program. That said, both the DPRK and Russia have seen recent setbacks in their space programs. So neither really have any strategic advantage right now.
Right. Professor Choi, there have been calls for the expansion of the United Nations Security Council to accommodate more permanent members, given the challenges we face right now in the global community. What are your thoughts on that call?
Yes, it is. The calls for the expansion of the UN Security Council to include more permanent members have been a topic of discussion for many years now. The current Security Council reflects the global power structure as it existed at the end of World War II, that is 1945, almost 78 years ago. Therefore, there are 5 permanent members right now: the US, Russia, China, United Kingdom, and France, and each of which holds an absolute veto power. So therefore, some people argue that the P5 no longer represent the current distribution of global power, and that countries like India, Brazil, Germany, or South Africa, and others should have a more prominent role in the decision-making process in the Security Council. And in addition, the expanding the UN Security Council can be seen as a way to make a council more equitable and inclusive, reflecting the principle of equal sovereignty among nations. However, there are also several significant challenges as well to expanding the Security Council. That first of all, the P5 countries are reluctant to give up their veto power, as it allows them to protect their national interests. Any expansion of this membership would need to address how veto power would be distributed among new permanent members. And also deciding which country should become a new member is also a very contentious issue. So many countries want to have a permanent membership, of course, and that it's very challenging to make a consensus on the selection criteria.
Right.
And therefore, the idea of expanding the UN Security Council is theoretically possible, but however, it is a very complex and politically challenging issue.
Right, and staying with that issue then, Dr. Noerper, what are your thoughts on the prospects of such an expansion of the UN Security Council?
But the general feeling among international relations scholars and observers is that clearly an 80-year-old institutional arrangement like this is not valid. And Russia has really shown the invalidity through the attack on Ukraine, a Security Council member attacking a member state, which puts the viability of the United Nations to question. So most people tend to feel that there is a need to eliminate either the P5 or to go ahead and create, I would suggest, a rotating council, completely rotating council without permanent representation, because it seems to be very, very difficult to figure out who those permanent members would be. And it seems to be more equitable if one was to be inclusive, so every country would have a turn every 8 or 9 years. However, there is a fundamental challenge of how you would even begin to get this process through, because it would require the acquiescence of the current P5. So it's a very fundamental obstacle and a very difficult situation. I would suggest that if you look around the world, you see other types of entities rising, like the G20, which are designed to provide what we're really looking for, in essence, more equity. And the UN still plays a very critical role on issues of peace, on climate change, on development, and those fundamental parts of the mission are not as significantly affected as what the Security Council does by way of peace and security.
Right, indeed. Professor Choi, aside from security concerns, President Yoon Suk Yeol also shared plans to promote the bridging of gaps on the digital, climate, as well as development fronts. What is the significance of Seoul's expanded ODA for next year?
So, as you said, President Yoon emphasized the Korean commitment to actively contribute to bridging the global disparities. So, in the middle of the lingering impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, and also the war in Ukraine, the President laid out the direction of Korea's support to mitigate the development gap, the climate gap, and also digital gap in developing countries. And he said the countries with financial and technological capabilities must play a responsible role in bridging the development gap, and the Republic of Korea will boldly expand its official development aid budget to achieve this goal. The Korean government has increased the size of its ODA budget by more than 40% for next year. So which means that the Korea's ODA budget for next year will be more than double that of 2019. So the government will use this expanded ODA fund to promote development cooperation, which is tailored to the needs of recipient countries. So there is some internationally recommended target for the amount of ODA. That is 0.7% of the gross national income. So it is, if it is increased by 40% for next year, then 2024 ODA budget of South Korea will be more than 0.3% of Korea's GNI. So that means there's still a long way to meet this internationally recommended target. However, it is also true that the speed of ODA budget increase under the Yoon Suk Yeol administration is very faster than other previous administrations.
Right, so it is taking a tangible step towards taking on a more responsible role in global affairs. Dr. Noerper, on combating climate change, President Yoon proposed a carbon-free alliance, which is an open platform to promote the adoption of carbon-free energy. On the digital front, he also spoke about a digital bill of rights to ensure productive use of technology. All that being said, Dr. Noerper, what are the broader implications of such joint efforts against universal challenges on perhaps promoting global unity against regional security challenges?
Well, I think they're incredibly exciting, and they show Korea's innate ability to be flexible, to be innovative, what has led to its success in the private sector now as a regional and global leader. And it really is a leadership stake. To go ahead and present this opportunity by way of leading on carbon neutrality as well as on the digital issues, which stake for democracy, transparency, and interaction. On the carbon issue, too, really to lean in on nuclear technology, on green hydrogen and other capabilities, carbon extraction. There's real opportunity, and there's opportunity for the private sector in Korea. There's opportunity for the state. There's opportunity for the international community through international organizations. So it's really meant to be inclusive in its approach, and it's something where Korea will show an innate strength, given already where it stands by way of green technology and the innovations it's made. Also, Korea is host to the Green Climate Fund in Incheon, which is a UN Environment Program initiated drive. And so the Green Climate Fund seeks to bridge climate change concerns between developed and developing countries. Ultimately, that's one of Korea's great advantages, having come from developing country status to now a leading developed country. Has a sensitivity, an awareness, an ability to provide an essential bridge that helps the world and helps developing countries that otherwise can seriously consider issues like carbon neutrality. So that's a tremendous, tremendous gain for Korea, and something that's in everyone's interest by way of peace and security and a better environmental sustainability.
Right. Professor Choi, President Yoon's latest UN address ended with a call for support behind Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo. Now, for this particular purpose, though, he's been holding quite a number of bilateral summits with his counterparts from around the world. What are your thoughts on his latest diplomatic endeavor?
So, in a single word, President Yoon's trip to the UN this week is an all-out effort for Busan Expo. So he met with many countries to appeal for their support. Upon arrival in New York, he met with 9 heads of state. And the next day, he met with 8 more heads of state and also senior officials. And I believe that this UN General Assembly was the last stage of the campaign to host the 2030 World Expo before the November vote. So currently, Korea, Saudi Arabia, and Italy are competing for the Expo. And Busan is considered to be at a relative disadvantage because it entered the race a little bit late. And the winner of the Expo will be determined by 2/3 majority of votes at the BIE General Assembly on November 28 this year. If no country receives a 2/3 majority, and a run-up vote will be held between the first and second place countries in the second stage. So our government plans to finish second in the first round of voting, and then go to the second round with Saudi to decide the winner by acquiring the votes of other countries in the second stage. So that is a strategy of Korean government. But however, there are some pessimistic voices as well that Busan may have a hard time winning the voting race in November. But no one can predict the future. I think each hard situation is not easy, and I think that's why our president is doing his best in New York.
Right, and given his efforts, Dr. Noerper, what are your thoughts on Busan's prospects of hosting the 2030 World Expo? I understand it's a difficult question, though.
Oh no, I'm a huge fan of Busan hosting. There's few better places on the face of this globe. It's an exciting city and has great potential as a host. Korea has shown itself over the years as a tremendous convener and a host and hub for the international community. It would be the 7th country only to have hosted the World Cup, the Olympics, and the Expo, and it makes a lot of sense. We'll see. The challenges of Rome and Riyadh are significant, and clearly Riyadh is putting a lot of resources toward it. There's lots of reasons, human rights and others, why Saudi may not be such a great choice. But Busan would be a terrific choice. And regardless, the bid is a strong one. It took multiple bids to get the Olympics. And look what happened with Seoul 88, with Pyeongchang 2018. Again, great amounts of pride for Korea. And so real potential. What should also probably be in mind is there's a lot of economic development potential around Busan associated with this. And that should continue post-bid regardless of the outcome. So things like the North Port area, the island airport, make a lot of sense. And so staking on Busan's future that way. But certainly best of luck on that, and we'll keep our fingers crossed that indeed Busan is the choice for 2030.
Right, indeed. Well, President Yoon Suk Yeol has promised an expo of solidarity should Busan be awarded the honor of hosting the 2030 World Expo. Right, Dr. Noerper, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts today. And
Thank you, Sunny.
Right, Choi here in the studio, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Right, and on that note, we end this week's editions of Issues and Insiders. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend. See you on Monday.